Okay, welcome. Bruchim Abayim. We are now today Erev Shabbos, Parshas Devarim, and we are Erev Tisha B'Av. Shabbos is the 9th of Av. Obviously, we're not fasting. We're fasting only after Shabbos Sunday. So this is the connection between the Parsha and the Tisha B'Av. So what's happening in the Parsha? Moshe is giving them a speech of rebuke, Musar Drasha. He's mentioning them all the sins that they did during the 40 years from the beginning till now. He's going over it. So the explanation, why is he doing it now? Why didn't he do it before? So they say, he learned this from Yankov Avinu. He won't tell them the Musar in the middle during their his lifetime, because then maybe they run away, maybe they won't appreciate it, maybe they will have faribah with him. So by the end, before he was passing away, nothing what to lose, because now he's going away. So it started that Moshe called, El Kol Yisrael, to the whole Jewish nation. Says Rashi, what means El Kol Yisrael? To all the Jewish people. So says Rashi, in other words, it's like saying is, why do you have to get all the Jewish people? What's not wrong with it? Have half of them or a quarter of them. You're giving them a Musar Drasha, so maybe not every. So says Rashi, if you would rebuke only some of them, or the people who stayed were not there, they would say, you were listening how he's rebuking you. You didn't answer nothing. Could answer him that answer for that and that answer for that. You could argue with him. If we would have been there, we would have answered. Told them, you all everybody are here. Whoever has an answer, Yashiv should answer. But practically what happened? Nobody answered anything. Did they have answers or not? This is interesting. He gathered everybody. Because if we take a few, the people who were not there would say we would put up an argument. Maybe excuse for what they did wrong, maybe they blame him, maybe blame the Eibishter, maybe blame the Erev Rav. They would find some excuses. Now I said, everybody are here. If anybody has any kind of argument, excuse, blame, go ahead, do it. So the question is, how come they didn't answer? You're saying that if they wouldn't have been there, they would put up if they wouldn't have been there, they say that if we would have been there, they were giving an argument. So these people that if they wouldn't have been there, who claim that if they would have been there, would give up an argument, why didn't they put up an argument? So we have to understand the whole principle of the idea of, first of all, you're rebuking him for 40 years. What do you want to do now? You're going in out to Yisrael. They sinned, they failed, they were punished in different kind of stages. So they were punished, and he saved them, and Nachshon and Aminadav saved them with killing the prince of Shevet Shimon, Sullivan, and the Midianite woman. So what is it trying to accomplish now? We're giving them the whole list of the sins, like before he's passing away. By the way, just to make clear, I'm sure everybody knows, from the beginning of Chumash Devarim, this is a speech of Moshe Rabbeinu till the end of the Chumash that he gave in the last month and 7 days. From Rosh Chodesh Shvat, this is a speech that he gave. That's the whole mission. It's called Mishnah Torah, the reputation, the summary of Chumash, with some clarification of things that were not clear, and everything till the last day when he passed away on the 7th of Adar, from Rosh Chodesh Shvat till the 7th of Adar. It's a month and 7 days. That's when he gave them the whole drasha. Yeah, and there's a part of the drasha. The beginning of the drasha was that rebuke. Then he had different things that he promised them. Now, interesting thing about Chumash Devarim, says the Gemara, Moshe said on his own. What means? The 4 books of Chumash, the first 4 books, Hashem was dictating to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Moshe was writing what Hashem dictated to him. But this Chumash, that he's saying it from Piatzmi, he's saying it on his own, from his mind, from his heart, he was talking to them. And that's when you see it in the language that and this is a script, Moshe's speech to the Jewish people in the last month and a week of his life before he left. Let me see, and then they got ready to go into Eretz Yisrael with him. And a few weeks later, they went into Eretz Yisrael, leading of Yeshua. So what means he said that on his own? It said the Rambam Paskins clearly, if somebody said that one word of the 5 books of Moses, Moshe said it on his own, not in the Eibishter, he's an atheist, he's a Pikerus. And here we're saying the Gemara said that the whole Chumash Devarim is mipiatzmei amar. So Tosfos in the Gemara says it's mipiatzmei, but beruach hakodesh, but with the holy revelation of the Eibishter. In other words, there was also nevuah. So now, if it's beruach hakodesh, what's the difference between the first 4 books and the 5th book that's beruach hakodesh? Everything is beruach hakodesh. No, it's a different beruach hakodesh. What's the difference? Oh, so the Rabbi explains. First 4 books Hashem dictated, and he wrote that name that what Hashem told him to say. The 5th book, it was a way that he internalized the understanding of the Inyanim, and he became completely a vessel of Hashem's Shechina medaberes mit der Greine, the Shechina. The Rabbi is talking through him in a way that's completely one with him. Not that he's just saying over what Hashem told him to say, what Hashem told him to write in his writing. He was completely internalized that. Well, that is a completely different idea. In other words, it's also from the Eibishter, but it comes to completely to not saying Hashem told me that and that. No. Now he's saying what he's saying from his brain, from his heart, in a level that he's completely one with the godliness. And what he's saying is the word of Hashem. So it's the word of Hashem, but he's saying it from his own. So that developed into the idea of the whole oral Torah Sheba'al Peh, the Tanoim v'Amoraim, and the daily old Torah Sheba'al Peh was given. They were saying it based on their understanding, how they understood the Torah, and they were arguing and so they understand. So is that Torah of the Eibishter, or that's Torah from their seichel, from their logic? So the answer is no. It's their logic, but that also beruach hakodesh. That's the Eibishter. In other words, the Torah given, step number 1 is given completely a revelation from above. Didn't get to even not to Moshe Rabbeinu, not even to him as internalize him. Here he became the first stage of internalizing it in him, give over the Torah the way it's completely internalized in him, and through that he became the the vessel that then all the Chachamim, Talmidei Chachamim, and Tzaddikim who wrote Torah later became a Torah that came through them, not something like just a revelation. Not Tana ever came and said, the Rebbe told me to say that this and this is the halacha. First of all, Torah Leva Shemayim is not in heaven. But the idea that they understood, they toiled hard with the logic to 100%, that was Torah. If somebody, and how do we know what is Torah, what's not? What anybody says is Torah. There's like 70 faces to Torah. Even according to Rizal, 600,000. But if a Torah that was accepted, halachas that accepted, chidushim are accepted by majority of the Jewish people, that has a din of Torah of Teras Hashem. Kol mash talmid vasik asid l'chadesh, what a proper scholar is going to mechadesh in Torah, nitna l'Moshe Messina, was given to Moshe Rabbeinu Messina. Okay. So we're seeing that Moshe Rabbeinu is giving them now from his drasha. So we asked the Shaila, he gathered everybody because you know that they shouldn't say if we wouldn't have been there, we would answer. Why would they wouldn't be there with the answer, and why did they not answer nothing now? So let's add a few questions on that. And so we see the rebuke, and the idea of the Tisha B'Av is also kind of rebuke. So what's interesting about Tisha B'Av? We saw also something an interesting idea. Tisha B'Av was the destruction of the temple to a point that we fasting 24, 25 hours. Not like all the other fast, similar to Yom Kippur, but Yom Kippur is not because of destruction. And that the ultimate destruction, in other words, that's when the Raglim got the Jewish people to rebel against going up to Eretz Yisrael. They said, you cried for nothing, I'll give you now it will be a cry forever. So Tisha B'Av looks like the worst day in the year, right? That James jokes about it also. But in the same time, we're saying that what? that Mashiach was born the Gemais in the Gemara, that the cow of the Arab was the Jew was mooing. So the Arab told him that, you know what the cow is saying? He said no, saying that the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and a few minutes later the cow mooed again. Said, you know what she's saying now? Mashiach was born. So Mashiach was born on Tisha B'Av. Isn't that a contradiction? Tisha B'Av is the worst moment in Jewish history. At the same time, it's saying that the biggest moment of history that Mashiach was born was at that time. We find also another interesting thing, that when the Greeks went into Kodesh HaKodashim, what did they find over there? They find that the Kruvim, the Cherubim, not only were facing each other, but they were like hugging each other. In other words, the principle was, the Gemara was saying that when the Jewish people would behave properly, the Kruvim would face each other in the Kodesh HaKodashim. And when they did not behave, they would turn away from each other. They wouldn't look at each other. Here, in the time of destruction, what is seeming the worst moment of destruction, but also the worst moment of lowliness from the Jewish people, because if there was a destruction, there must be a reason for that. So the Kruvim were facing each other and even hugging each other until they were making fun. Look what these people are serving to. So that means Mashiach is born then. The Kruvim were hugging each other, but that Kruvim represented the Eibishter and the Eden, completely in the ultimate love and affection and connection and appreciation of the Jewish people with the Eibishter was revealed in that time. Could be even more than another time. How do they go together? The idea. And we see, so that idea of just seeing in the destruction, the ultimate destruction, that halachically we have to fast, halachically we're not allowed to learn Torah, somebody that makes you happy. And in the same time saying that the biggest things like happen then. We saw it even in a later stage, that Rabbi Kiva and his Chaverim were walking towards Eretz Yisrael, towards Yerushalayim. They came to Har HaZeisim. They tore Kriya, they tore their clothing because it was over a month that they didn't say the Makim HaMikdash, the place of the Beis HaMikdash was empty, was destroyed. Then when they came closer, they saw a fax coming out from the place of Kodesh HaKodashim. So the Chacham started to cry and he started to laugh. So they asked him, why are you laughing? He says, why are you crying? So he said, what do you mean? A place that they said that whoever will go in there will die immediately, and even a Kain, only a Kain Gadol and Yom Kippurim is allowed to. Now, Shualim Hilchabe. He says, that's what I'm laughing. Because just like this prophecy of the destruction came out in fullest, as it says in Pasuk, Shualim Hilchabe, that facts will. Therefore, you know that the Yeshu was Kainis, that the prophecy of Mashiach that will come and Yerushalayim will be rebuilt in the ultimate level would be fulfilled also Behidu 100%. So let's think a second. What didn't they know? So they told them, you comfort us. Twice now. What didn't they understand before he told them that? What did they understand now? They knew Yeshaya, in the view of Yeshaya, there will be the rebuild, gathering of the exiles and the building that will be Beis Hamikdash and it'll be forever. They knew everything. So why were they crying? We did knowledge of that. Rabbi Akiva knew what they knew, that it's a destruction now. Now it's a destruction. And halachically it's a destruction. Akiva himself tore his clothes also when they were on Har HaZeisim, they saw the place of the Beis Hamikdash. So how does it go to, what did he teach them that they say he comfort them? I mean, there's something, two things together. So let's look at it in the whole picture a little bit more and see what did Akiva, how did they comfort them? It'll be good, they knew it'll be good. It's not good now, Rabbi Akiva, it's not good now. So what are the arguments? Why this one laughing and this one is crying? And then I want to cover another few stories to talk about it a little bit. And famous story in Lubavitch that in time of the Alter Rebbe, one day for Tisha B'Av, I think it was the Kalina, was a friend of the Alter Rebbe. He was a student of the Maggid also, a big tzaddik, Shlomo Kalina. He came to visit the Alter Rebbe before Tisha B'Av. He was there for Tisha B'Av. So Tisha B'Av in the morning, I guess they walked into shul. what was happening in Shul at that time? People were saying kinnis, and Shmuel Munke is known to be the wild one, if you want to call it, the mischievous. He was taking beblach, like bolts of kind of from trees, and he was throwing it at the people who were crying and saying kinnis. And I think what happened that Shmuel Munke, when the Kaliner, Shlomo Kaliner walked in, Shmuel Munke threw one on him before he realized that Alter Rabbi is with him and who it is. Just thought that person came. So Shlomo Kaliner turns to the Alter Rabbi and says, because people like him were making fun from the whole thing. He didn't say the word. He said, because people like him, Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. I mean, saying that here people are crying and saying kinnis of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash, and he's making a whole letzonis of it, make a joke out of it. The Alter Rebbe didn't respond nothing. A few hours later, they were talking, so they were walking, and they walked into the forest. The forest wasn't far away from them. So they were talking in Yonim, in Yonim, I guess, it doesn't say what. Suddenly they hear somebody is crying. So they became very quiet, and they listen and they follow the voice. They see somebody sitting on the floor and reading the kinnis, and he's crying. They were watching it from far and didn't want to be disturbed. So Shlomo Kaliner tells the Alter Rebbe, because of people like him, the Beis Hamikdash will be rebuilt. So the Alter Rebbe tells them, yeah, I just want to tell you something interesting. See, the same person that you said this morning that was throwing the bablach, the fruit, kind of half little fruit, like unfinished. The same person that we said he before could even be destroyed because of him to rebuild. What is happening here? So why was he trying to make a joke of it in the morning? So you see here also something. There is two opposites of this inyanim. So that means they have to go together. In other words, Mashiach could be born only in the Churban, Beis Hamikdash. That means, what is the keli? What is the vessel? What could bring the revelation of Mashiach? That is dafke the Churban. So let's look a second. What is the idea of punishment for a second? What is the idea of the destruction? Why that is the time when Mashiach is born, and that's why the Kruvim, the cherubim, were facing each other and hugging each other. It means the revelation in the physical world of the love of the Eibishter. So, and that's going back to the idea of Moshe Rabbeinu's rebuking them. And if they wouldn't have been there, they would have an argument that they could have answered them. And now they were there, they didn't have an argument. That means that it's different if you hear the rebuke from somebody else in the name of Moshe Rabbeinu, or you hear it from Moshe Rabbeinu himself. So let's look in a very general way what the idea of punishment is, of exile. Call it exile, it's called punishment. So there is three ways of looking on exile. One is the very simple one. It's a punishment. A person did something wrong. The reward and punishment, simply. If you know that there is a punishment, then the person has a better chance to overcome his temptation. There is temptations. There's desires to do something wrong. But when you know if you're going to do it, the child knows he's going to get punishment, then that punishment is designed to help him to stop himself. Also, when if he did something wrong, he got a punishment that helps him next time not to do it. That's one of it. So it's really a punishment in order to help you not to do it, and if you did it to help you not to do it again. And there is reward and punishment. There's no free lunch here. There's no something you can do whatever you want, and everything should be fine. That's one level looking on the idea of exile. Second idea of exile, punishment, is not only to give you a punishment, but to cleanse the person. When the person did something wrong, he's in a way, there's a stain on his soul. He did something wrong. He hurt somebody. The punishment is not only making him that you should be afraid to do it again, but actually refining, it's cleansing him, that the stain should be washed off. And that applies only also to punishment down here in this world, also to punishment in the world to come. And as we said, I think we mentioned before, the Gehenna is basically a wash machine. So it's not only to punish, they shouldn't do it, but it's cleansing him. But you could say that also means because of our sin, we went to exile, and to exile to be cleansed. But let's take a second back. Even so, we mentioned it before. The Rabbi is making a covenant, a bris bein absorim, the covenant between him and Avraham and the Jewish nation for eternity. What is he telling him? That Geir Yezaracho, your children will be in exile, Beretz Leilem, not in their own country, Va'avodum ve'inu Yisam, and they will be enslaved, and they will torture them, Arba Meisham, 400 years. Okay? That's what you tell Avraham Avinu when you make a covenant of friendship, of love. And the epitome, the ultimate kind of connection to a way that you're going to make a connection of a covenant means beyond logic, in essence, connection of the Jewish people and the Eibishter. That's what you're telling them that you're going to suffer. And doesn't say because they'll sin. That means even if the Jewish people would not sin, well, they did not sin. They went to Mitzrayim without sinning. In Mitzrayim, they got involved in the fallen and case of impurity. But before they came to Mitzrayim, they were not sinning. As long as, even in Mitzrayim, as long as Yaakov was living, and the Shvatim were living, there was no slavery. Why? Because they did not sin. But still, the promise that there will be torture was not conditioned if they'll sin. That means even not to sin. Why? What is happening? What is the idea of galus? Chassidus gives a very interesting example for that. Let's say a teacher is giving a shiur to his student. And he's we're talking about a real teacher. A real teacher means the epitome, the ultimate teacher, who is completely, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Akiva, Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rabbi. And he's teaching it to the student the maximum they could understand, right? But that's nothing, it's not his maximum, but he has maximum they could understand. Now, the nature of when somebody you bring down when a Rab, when an ultimate Rab, it's not a teacher in class, but that's in a small way by everybody. When you teach something and explaining something in broadness and elaborating it, then comes out new ideas come to you that you couldn't come to it without before you taught. As it's called, mitalmida yesa mikulam, for my students more than everybody. So sometimes because it's the questions of the students asking, but sometimes just because you're explaining the idea, you come up with ideas, suddenly you have a flash of something bigger that you never thought about it before. Now, what's going to happen now? If you have that flash, you feel that something, a big thing came into you, you don't have it even clear what it is, but you feel there's something, a tremendous flash, you have something much deeper that you never thought before. You have two options. If the Rav will continue to teach, means not to focus on what the flash, what was there. So the Talmud will feel very good because he feels he's teaching him, he's relating to him and explaining and the understanding. He's in Gan Eden, he's in heaven. But the idea will disappear. Because this a flash of Chochmeh, it's not bina yet, it's not, doesn't have vessels, you have to hold on to it. So that will disappear. So who will lose if that will disappear? Everybody. The Rav will lose that he doesn't have it, and he won't be able to get it later. It's not possible. He will lose, and also the student will lose, because if the teacher will stop teaching now, and he'll immediately focus on this new flash and try to bring it into some vessels and some kalim to understand, then he will contain it, and then he'll be able to understand it clearly. Then ultimately he'll be able to teach it to the student. So now our Shim doesn't say that when he starts focusing a little bit on the flesh, he still continues to teach it very from an external way, and he's looking at it. But the more the idea is deeper, and he realizes, the more he's being removed from the teaching the student. His mind is not here, his focus is not here, and he's completely like involved in that new idea that he has to give it all attention. And therefore the students sitting there and feel that the Rav doesn't care about me. He doesn't teach me anymore. He's not talking to me, not looking even at me, completely in a different world. So he's in Golus. He said, a minute ago I was in heaven, now what did he do to me? Put me in Golus. But why is that? Because the Rav wants to be able to, not only for himself that he wants it, The main thing what he wants it for the student, to be able to give it ultimately to the student. And therefore, he's holding back. So in other words, in history, what's happening the whole time, there's coming a new revelation from godliness. And that new revelation has to be, in order to be able to bring it in, you have to erase, if you want to call it, or forget, or move out, move away from the revelation that you have now, on the level of the revelation now. So therefore, the galus is almost the idea of the teacher stopping to teach is the ultimate goodness for the student. If the student would understand what's happening here, that the Rav is having Mesiras Nefesh to move back to the idea of to get the new idea in order to be able to give it to him, then he wouldn't feel so bad. Even so, he will feel bad because practically he's not teaching him now. So okay, so repeat something that he learned, but it's nowhere close to what the teacher was teaching him, the maximum that he could understand. He was stretching him. But here came something completely beyond that. So in other words, also we say the nullification of step number 1 is the vessel for step number 2. In other words, if A1 and 2 are relative to each other, so A is a preparation for 2. If you forget A, you will have a problem to get to number 2. But when 2 is infinitely higher than A, than 1, then you must erase number 1. So let me ask you such a question. So there's 2 people who want to learn number 2. One learned number 1, and now he wants to learn number 2 that's infinitely higher. And there's another person who never learned number 1, but he also wants to learn number 2. So now we're saying if you nullify completely, so number 2 has to forget, one person has to forget number 1, like Rabbi Zera. He fasted 100 fasts in order to forget Talmud Bavli, in order to learn Talmud Yerushalmi. So let's say another friend of him should say, why should I learn Talmud Bavli and forget Talmud Bavli and then learn Talmud Yerushalmi? I'll go straight to Talmud Yerushalmi. If 0 is the vessel to go infinitely, to jump, an infinite jump, so why put in all the efforts for years to learn Talmud Bavli, learn step number 1, and then erase it, and then go to number 2. When number 2 is infinitely higher, so infinitely higher means that doesn't bring you closer. That's why you have to erase it. So he'll say, the Rabbi Zera's friend, I'll go straight to number 2. No, you won't be able to go. The 0 of number 1, the nullification of number 1, that is the vessel for be able to go to number 2, to the infinitely higher than that. The guy who never learned Talmud Bavli can never get Talmud Yerushalmi. He will first have to forget whatever he has to learn Talmud Bavli, and then he'll be able to go to Talmud Yerushalmi. So the whole idea of Golus, of the idea is, and that's what ultimately they have to say, the idea of the Jewish people constantly have descent, and Moshe Rabbeinu is giving him the rebuke to explain them how, I think he was giving him a summary how they went from one level to another level, and each level beyond was infinite beyond before. And that's why when the Tisha B'Av was there, that's when Mashiach was born. Because through the nullification, right, of the Rab, in other words, when Moshe Rabbeinu, we say the Eibishter, wants to bring a tremendous, infinitely higher revelation into the world, we have to nullify the previous revelation. So when the destruction of the temple came, that's what in other words, the destruction of the second temple was the beginning of the building of the third Beis Hamikdash, which is an infinitely higher level. So when is the real love of the teacher, of the Rav, Moshe Rabbeinu, to the Jewish people, is when he's stopping to teach them, then it's expressing a much deeper love than the love that had before. So that explains also the idea that when Shmuel Mukher was throwing the shishkes, the bablach on the people who were crying, he was telling them, there's two ways of crying. I'm in bed now, but if you don't know what that way, when you're crying, that really there's something bigger in here, the pnimis, the innerness of that is much bigger, infinitely higher coming, then it's a wrong crying. And the same thing goes to Rabbi with his chaverim. He told him, of course you have to cry now. But in the same time, in a deeper level, you have to laugh, because you have to know that this is in a deeper level of connection of the Eden with the Eibishter. And that's, I think, that's happening with Moshe Rabbeinu. When Moshe Rabbeinu tells the Jewish people the sin, they hear between the lines of Moshe Rabbeinu, the love that he has for them, the love that the Eibishter has for them. That's why they didn't answer. Because you don't need an answer, everything is good. Like it says when the Alter Rebbe read the rebuke, the middle Rebbe said, you don't hear any curses, you hear brachas. Because that's the emes, not because you hear. That's the emes. But if they wouldn't have been there and they would hear the rebuke from the people who heard it, they would say we have excuses, because then you don't hear that's really something good, and then you don't want to hear it. That's where it comes, and this year comes out in a revealed way in Shabbos. Shabbos is Tisha B'Av, night of Shabbos, and what do you have to do? You have to celebrate. You're not allowed to have any kind of mourning on Shabbos, and you're allowed to have, and you try to have that Suda Shleim B'Shaited, like the meal of Shleim HaMelech in his time. In other words, you have to make sure there should be no signs of mourning. Why? Because Shabbos reveals the inner idea of the Tisha B'Av. So now that's not Tisha B'Av and Shabbos. Shabbos is the real Tisha B'Av, how Tisha B'Av is going to become a Yontif for Eden. But when we go after Shabbos, you have to have in a revealed way, we have to know the idea that that's not revealed yet. So therefore, the idea of the fasting. So let's hope that we'll have the premise from Shabbos be revealed Erev Shabbos. When we in the Beis Hamikdash with Melech HaMashiach, it's already close to 2,000 years. Sure enough, Kol HaKitzin, and we should be in Beis Hamikdash with Kol Klal Yisrael, Mizin Kedesh Kadosh, Yeveniske, Zen sich mit Rebbe Beguf Gashmi, Dol Amate, Behu Yigaleinu. Good Shabbos, and call to all the best Mashiach.